All right. I think we are live. I'm just going to fix up a couple of things here and there. You are all looking at this and you're going to tell me what you think about the new digs and the new background and all that stuff. And I'm just making sure everything is working fine over here. All right. I hope you are having a good night. I know it's an unusual night. Normally, I would be doing this tomorrow, but I'm out of town, so I'm going to try to do this today. And plus, there were a lot of stories I wanted to get to. So, with that in mind, I do not have Den tonight, so I'm going to do my best to sift through all the comments in between stories. If you have any questions, comments, whatever, please leave them in the notes and I will make sure I check them out. As always, you could support this channel by going to patreon.com/Hemant. I appreciate that. And you could subscribe to my newsletter at friendlyatheist.com. Go do that right now. You can do that for free if you want to. Okay, with that in mind, let's get started. I don't even have a script for this one. I wanted to talk about this debate that has gone viral this week in which Medi Hassan, a progressive commentator who runs a website called Zeteo, he did one of those Jubilee videos where it's like one person versus 20 people who disagree with him in a circle. And I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago because the last time a video like this, one of those Jubilee videos, went viral, it was Jordan Peterson at the center of the circle and a bunch of people much smarter than Jordan Peterson on the outside. And they were debating religion, and it was a bunch of atheists around there. And the people behind Jubilee actually contacted me asking if I wanted to participate in what they build as like a Christian versus atheist debate using their format. And I don't live anywhere near Los Angeles. I could not do it even if I wanted to, so it didn't happen. But they did have some interesting atheists represent that position. Anyway, so this week they had Hassan, Medi Hassan, and he was debating a bunch of far right conservatives. And one of the people who decided to debate him was this guy named Connor. And I know that because they include their names whenever these guys get in the circle to argue with them. And I'm going to play for you a couple of clips from this scene with Connor because some of them, some of the people in that circle got downright scary, Connor being one of them. I actually thought Mehdi Hassan did a really good job in that particular format. He is known as a guy who knows how to debate. He comes to interviews and debates prepared. He brings the receipts. And in this particular, he's even written a book about how to debate. Like he knows what he's doing. And in this particular format, he was clearly prepared. He did not realize how insane the other people would be. But I'll play for you the first clip. And this is this dude, Connor, who wants to argue with him. And I will play the first clip and then we'll talk. Yikes. So one of the things about that clip is, and Mehdi Hassan points this out right after that, it's Donald Trump is not Catholic, to which this guy says, doesn't matter to me. I'm not a fan of Trump. I did not vote for Trump. But clearly, we're not even talking about right-wing Republicans. We are talking about right-wing extremists. And this guy is like, yeah, I want to live in an autocracy. I want basically a benevolent king who likes me. And if he doesn't like you, so what? You're not me. I don't care about you. It's a very scary thing to be thinking. And I imagine if you're Medi, you're like, I came prepared to argue with Republicans only to realize, oh, they're bringing crazy, insane people who don't want to live in a democracy anymore. And that's frightening. But this Connor guy is interesting. One, he's just super smug, even though he has nothing to back it up. And he's very proud of this idea that, yeah, I like autocracy. No, I don't like democracy. Yeah, the rules that apply to you should not have to apply to me. And that's a scary thing for anyone to think. Let me play a second clip over here. So not only is this guy anti-democratic, this guy's also a flat out racist. He thinks only people like him. Like, this is the thing about conservatives. They believe the law does not apply to them, and they think the entire world should look like whatever their family looks like. You see this, by the way, in conservative Christian circles too, where they say things like women should be homemakers, women should be submissive to men. I don't even care if that's what you do in your own family, but they always want to apply it to your family, because whatever your family looks like, it's not what they want, so there's something wrong with you, right? That's the mindset. Whatever they do is the standard, it's the default. Everyone else is deviating from that, and that doesn't make them different, it makes them wrong. And that's this guy's mindset. There's one more clip I want to play because here's what we've heard from Connor so far. He's into autocracy. He's definitely racist. But there's one more clip you should see and see what this. So excited to say he's a fascist. He's so excited to cite a Nazi propagandist in that time. Like, it is scary that this guy exists. I've heard criticism, by the way, that the whole Jubilee platform, the whole video that's going viral, Jubilee should be criticized because what they're doing is platforming these people with these horrendous views. I would make one distinction with that. I actually liked this video. I watched the full hour 40 video of Medi debating these people. For the life of me, I have no idea how he managed to stay calm in the face of all of these people. But I think there is a difference between giving Medi Hassan this platform where he can knock down these right-wing arguments and far-right extremists versus giving someone like Jordan Peterson the stage where you have atheists coming one after another to knock him down, even though I liked most of the atheists who did that video. It depends who you're putting at the center of this and what's the point of view you're trying to get across. In this case, because Medi was trying to say certain things about Donald Trump, that he's supportive of criminal behavior, that he's anti-immigrant, that he's like bad for the country, I do think there's a good reason to have that platform. I do think if people want to criticize it and you have someone smart who can knock it down, that's actually good because these people do exist. Whether you like it or not, their ideas are going to be heard. And I'd rather have them do it right out in the open rather than a silo on Rumble or whatever pages they are using. So for Medi Hassan to get these people to say out loud these horrible, despicable things, yeah, they're racist. Yes, they're fascist. Yes, they support Nazis in certain ways. I think it's important to get that out there because Republicans can't easily run away when this stuff is right out there in the mainstream. They want to pretend these are fringe elements, but what these guys believe is not that fringe. Even if you think the Nazi sympathizing is extreme, well, the racism isn't. We see it in Donald Trump's policies backed by the Republican Party. So I actually don't mind the format. I think it depends on who you're trying to put at the center. If you're putting like a right-wing extremist in the middle of this circle, I do kind of have I do have a problem with giving them this chance to espouse their views as if they're the reasonable ones. Because again, the people outside the circle, they only get a few minutes to try and make their case. That's a lot of pressure. Whereas the person in the middle has like an hour, 2 hours to build out what it is that they say, what they believe. There's a lot more room for nuance there. So again, if you're putting Medi Hassan at the center, I don't mind it that much. Anyway, I'm bringing all this up because, and I wanted to show you those clips of Connor specifically, because that's the guy out of all the crazy people who are trying to debate Medi. Connor's the one that's been in the news this week because of a thing he recently posted. And it reminded me of this particular meme. You may have seen this before. I'm going to show it here. This is an old tweet, but it always makes the round for certain reasons. But look at this imaginary conversation. The conservative says, I've been censored for my conservative views. Holy shit, you were censored for wanting lower taxes? LOL, no, not those views. Oh, so deregulation? Haha, not those views either. Which views exactly? Oh, you know the ones. And the joke here, obviously, is that Republicans, conservatives who always say they're being censored and silenced and suppressed, it doesn't matter if you're a politician or some right-wing comedian with duct tape on your mouth for your comedy special. Whenever you say, I'm being censored or silenced, it's like, oh, what is it that you said that people were trying to shut you up over. And they never will just say out loud what it is that they said. They always try to shield it somehow. Well, guess what happened to our friend Connor here? It turns out he launched a platform. He launched a page on Give, Send, Go, which is like the right wing GoFundMe. Why? Because you could see right here, fired for my political beliefs. Really? They fired you because you're a conservative? No, they fired him, presumably, because he's a Nazi loving racist fascist. I don't know what this guy does for a living, and he doesn't say. But this is what he does right. My name is Connor, and I was recently shown in the latest Jubilee episode. As a result, unfortunately, I was subsequently released from my job, which, by the way, that is a sentence with very little grammar and way too many polysyllabic words. He's trying to sound smart, but he's not. I'm raising money as an emergency fund and for other expenses while I look for a new job. Unfortunately, voicing fully legal, traditional right wing political views like Hitler was fine and, all right, white people rule, that results in real consequences. This is cancel culture and political discrimination on full display. No, no, not even. This is not, yes, it's fully legal because you have the right to free speech. It's not traditional right wing political views, unless your argument is that everyone on the right is just a racist, fascist, Nazi sympathizer, which, you know what? I'm open to that one because, yeah, we kind of see it a lot of places. But I don't know what this guy did for a living. I don't know what conversation was had that led to him losing his job. I don't know if there was discrimination involved or some company, this unnamed company, just wanted to cut their ties with the guy and they saw the opportunity. Who knows? He did not give us information. I have not read the information anywhere. But interestingly enough, what I have seen is check this out. How much money has he raised? His goal was $15,000. As of this taping, he's raised over $36,000. So it turns out being a complete lunatic extremist is good for business. Also, I would point out, Give, Share, Go, Give, Send, Go. They have this section here where they say how many people have donated. And you could see how many people have given. Over 1,100 people have given money to this campaign. That's disturbing. How many people have shared this page with others? 148. Then they have this last section, which just makes me laugh. Because at no point did Connor say, I need you all to pray for me. Because, of course, all these Christian grifters, all these Catholic grifters, they know prayer's not actually going to help them. Thoughts and prayers are for kids who deal with mass shootings. When they need money, they actually need your cash. They don't want your prayers. And yet, that is still an option on this page. The comments on that page, by the way, are really scary because the people giving him money in big amounts are all saying very disturbing things as for why they're giving him their money. But I do find it funny that this guy thinks he's the victim because he lost his job, when what exactly happened in that video, Connor got several minutes, way more than some other people, by the way, to just, Medi Hassan gave him rope and this guy decided to take it and hang himself, right? Like, he just spoke. He clearly wasn't taken out of context. You could tell that he was saying exactly what he felt. And now he's suffering the consequences because his beliefs are disturbing. And now, as so many conservatives do, he's like, what? This is cancel culture. I've been discriminated against. It's like all Medi did is ask you what your beliefs are. And then you talked. And now you're very disturbed because it turns out when you say these insane things outside of your conservative bubble, outside of your right-wing echo chambers, it turns out everything you believe is really disturbing. And if you don't have any friends in your life who could set you straight, and anyone that cares about you enough to tell you, holy shit, you need help, then you might go around thinking, yeah, this is a totally normal thing to believe. It's not. It's disturbing. And it seems like Medi was the first guy to point out, oh, you're broken on the inside somehow. But anyway, if you haven't watched that full video, I don't say this very often, especially about 100-minute long debates, but I don't know. I found it useful just to see how Medi responded to all this stuff. Not because I learned anything from the conservatives. Everything they said was stuff I already knew about them. They don't have any logical coherency, consistency. They believe really disturbing things that ultimately boils down to racism and their own ignorance. I already knew that. But if you want to see a really good debater knock this stuff down, it was really good to watch. I also appreciated one thing Jubilee does, which is they have real-time fact checks. And Mehdi Hassan was there spouting information, numbers, statistics, etc. And then in the video, you would see them put up a little like pop-up video thing that says, this is the truth. Like, we have the numbers in front of us. And it turns out everything Medi said was accurate. And they were doing that over and over, having that pop-up bubble come up and say, yeah, Medi's right on this, and whoever is arguing against it is just wrong, which I found to be very useful. So check out that video. I'll leave a link when this clip goes up. But yeah, I'm curious what you all thought about it. I'm going to pause here because Den's not here and just run through to see if there are any questions or comments people had. This is a fair one. They don't want free speech unless it's their ideas. That idea came through so much. They wanted to shut this guy down because they felt he wasn't. They felt Medi wasn't an American citizen. He is. He's a naturalized citizen, and that broke their brains. The idea that he was brown broke their brains a lot. And as some of these people, and it wasn't just Connor, pointed out, they believe citizenship should be limited to white people, people who have a stake in this country, as if immigrants don't. And then sometimes they would be like, well, I'm not saying just white people. There are some brown people who used to live here who have a stake in it, just not the kind of brown Medi is. So, yeah, they were very open about how bigoted they were. Anything else here? Let's see. Just double checking. So if I start a GoFundMe for being a jackass, I can get money. Not a GoFundMe. They might take down your page. But Give, Send, Go absolutely does not. I believe that's the site like Rittenhouse used after his incident too. But that kid with cancer who can't afford their care gets pennies at best. Yes, that's America for you. That's how it works. I think this is fair too. What these people forget is that you are still free to destroy your own life with your speech. Stop complaining about the hate you receive for the hate you espouse. This is always the thing about like comedians who are like, I'm a victim of cancel culture. It's like, no, you could say whatever you want. You have audiences that want to hear it. No one's saying you're not allowed to have a podcast or something like that. But if you're going to put this stuff out there, you deserve to be judged for it. And people are going to react to it. And if they think you're racist when you're making a joke that's not funny, and they say that out loud, that's not cancel culture. That's you not being smart or funny. Deal with that. This is also an interesting conspiracy theory, and I say that lovingly. I find highly suspicious he doesn't name the employer in the hopes of shaming them. I bet it's because there wasn't one. This is the thing I don't get. Like, if he got fired, it would be very easy, knowing how right-wing platformers work. If he said, I worked at this place and they fired me, and he said the name, it would be very easy to have all the right-wing assholes like gang up on that business, leave them bad reviews, send them nasty messages, maybe even worse. Like, that's what happens every time. They do it to libraries. So the fact that he didn't mention where he got fired from, it does open the door to the possibility that maybe this guy didn't even have a job. I mean, that's why he might have been available to do this filming. Who knows? And now he's just like, I lost my job. He goes by a pseudonym anyway online. I don't necessarily know what his deal is. What else is there? On the flip side, can't imagine why his colleagues wouldn't want to work with a guy who wants to ethnically cleanse the country. Fair point, if that is what happened. My only issue with that is, guess what? There's a lot of Republicans who support Republican policies. They have jobs. They work everywhere. So unfortunately, if you have like a big If you have a lot of employees in your workplace, odds are there are a bunch of people who do not care about Republicans supporting genocide, Republicans trying to eliminate brown people, immigrants from this country, legal immigrants, because that's what they're doing right now, and that should be disturbing as well. That's the thing. I've seen so many people say this guy was some fringe extremist. It's like, well, which parts? Because mainstream Republicans believe a lot of this. There is a lot of overlap between what the run-of-the-mill Republicans defend and what this guy said out loud. Just double checking before I continue. Thank you for the kind words about the background. You can zoom in. You could see what books are up there. I appreciate this donation considering Connor. Thank you, Olivia. Did name his employer to shame them. I bet it's a grift. He was already unemployed, probably. Yes, agreed. It's a possibility. Thank you for that donation. All right, let's jump. Give me 1 second here, and I will jump to a different story. I actually have a kind of happy one. Let me make sure I'm pulling up all the right stuff here. Okay. So we have to talk about Ryan Walters, the superintendent of public instruction in Oklahoma. Last time we talked about this guy, let me give you a rundown of what he's been up to, because it's been maybe a couple months since I talked about him. But his big thing is he wants to indoctrinate students in Oklahoma with right-wing propaganda. And like, there's a difference between implying that's what you want to do and actually doing it. He's very quickly shifted to the, oh no, we are doing it part of this. And to that end, what he did is back in December, he released a set of state standards for social studies classes. So US history, civics, government classes, everything from kindergarten through 12th grade. He basically said these are the new standards that all public schools will have to use as a baseline for what they teach in those classes. And the way this works is it's fine for him to say these are the new standards. Then the public can see what they are. They can weigh in on those standards. And then a few months later, there's a committee that decides if anything needs to be revised. The Board of Education has to vote on them, things like that. So Walters released the standards in December. And I've made videos about those, the standards. They were very disturbing. I mean, he bragged about how Christian they were. He bragged about the fact that the Bible was mentioned like 40 plus times in the standard, as if promoting the Bible is something history classes are supposed to do. That was disturbing. And then the state's Board of Education in February was supposed to vote on those standards. Now, Governor Kevin Stitt of Oklahoma, despite being a Republican, is not actually a friend anymore of Ryan Walters. They don't like each other. Kevin Stitt's like, I'm going to replace the Board of Education members, and he has the power to do this, with 3 people who are more closely aligned to him, thinking maybe this will fend off some of Ryan Walters' worst tendencies. But Ryan Walters goes to that first meeting with this revised Board of Education, and he's like, you guys, you need to approve all these standards right away. You don't have time. We need to get it in front of the legislature so that it's ready for schools when they open back up in August. And the Board of Education was like, well, you just sent us the final draft of the standards like yesterday, and they're really long, hundreds of pages. We haven't had time to look through everything. And Walters was like, too bad. You got to vote on this right now. And so they did, and they voted to approve the standards, despite all the criticism. What Ryan Walters did not tell them is that he had gone in and changed the standards that he proposed in December to make them even worse. And that is a scary thing. And again, I've made videos about this. You can look them up already, but I'll show you just a couple examples of what he did in a second. But the Board of Education said, yeah, we approved these standards. Only saying later, oh, he changed them? We didn't know that. The Republican-dominated legislature in Oklahoma had the chance to say, we are not accepting these standards. And basically what that would have done is Ryan Walters would have had to go back to the drawing board, and public schools would just have to use the previous set of standards, which are fine. But the Republican legislature said, yeah, let's just not do anything, which meant Ryan Walters' version is the version that is now in place. And there are 2 lawsuits that have tried to stop it because August is just around the corner. Schools are back in session. One of those lawsuits was struck down. It didn't work by a district judge, and they've appealed to the Oklahoma Supreme Court. There is another lawsuit filed by church-state separation groups. That one is directly filed with the Oklahoma Supreme Court, and basically we're all waiting for the Oklahoma Supreme Court to weigh in on this. But in the meantime, Ryan Walters' version of what ought to be taught in these classes, that's what public schools have to go with right now. So what is it that Ryan Walters wants kids to learn? Well, here's a perfect example of it. This is what he wants kids to know in high school, specifically about the 2020 elections. And there's a couple things. I'm sorry, I want to clarify. This is about like the first Trump administration. So if you're a 9th grader, you're learning US history, guess what? Kids have to learn about what happened during the first Trump administration. And a lot happened during the first Trump administration. So how do you boil it down to the big things? And I want you to look at letter C, first of all. Identify the source of the COVID-19 pandemic from a Chinese lab. There is no evidence, no definitive evidence that that's what happened. So what the hell? He's already claiming this right-wing conspiracy is real and putting that right in the standards. I'll remove myself here. Look at letter D. This is the one that got the most attention. Identify discrepancies in the 2020 election results by looking at graphs and other stuff, including the sudden halting of ballot counting in select cities in key battleground states, the security risks of mail-in balloting, sudden batch dumps, an unforeseen record number of voters, and the unprecedented contradiction of bellwether county trends. All of that stuff right there, that's all right-wing conspiracy thinking. Like the 2020 election results had this huge turnout because people were really pissed off at Trump. So people came out to vote in large numbers. There were no significant discrepancies that would have changed the results. There were no sudden batch dumps. That's like a Dinesh D'Souza conspiracy theory. So this is what Ryan Walters wants kids to learn about what happened in 2020, basically churning right-wing conspiracy theories into facts that children have to learn. That's why people were so mad about this. Someone's asking what grade is this? This would be 9th grade, like US history or something like that. But this is the type of thing Ryan Walters wanted to do. By the way, the old standards that Walters had put out there, the old standards used to mention George Floyd's death, murder. It mentioned the Black Lives Matter movement. Both of those were removed from the revised standards. The other thing is that Ryan Walters also treats the Bible as like legitimate history. This is an example of what he wants 2nd graders to learn. And you could see the part that's highlighted in red. Identify stories from Christianity that influenced the American colonists, founders, and culture, including the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth. For example, the Golden Rule and the Sermon on the Mount. First of all, this idea that Christianity influenced our founders? No, it didn't. That's why the Constitution doesn't mention Christianity. It's all about freedom of religion and from religion, and implies separation of church and state. Like all this stuff, that Christianity did not influence the people who said we need freedom from religion. It also, this idea that they need to learn about Jesus, specifically the Golden Rule. Guess what? That's not a Jesus original. Treating others the way you want to be treated, that was around long before the Jesus story came about. And it's funny to me that he wants the Sermon on the Mount taught, because that might actually be good. But you know who doesn't give a damn about the Sermon on the Mount? Conservative Christians. You think they care about helping the least of these and helping the poor, all that stuff? No. Ryan Walters doesn't care about that. I'm surprised they knew that's a Jesus thing at this point. So this is not the only way they were mentioning religion. Here's one more. This is for 8th graders. I'll remove myself here. Evaluate the role of Judeo-Christian ideals in supporting colonial demands for independence, as exemplified by the Bible being a frequently cited authority by America's founders. That's a lie. The founders did not cite the Bible in its original documents. That's why you don't see Bible verses in the Constitution. There's a Christian pseudo-historian named David Barton who pretends this stuff happened, and he goes around church to church, politician to politician, pretending like the 10 Commandments is US history. It's not. He's a liar, and he's been debunked to the point where a Christian publisher removed his book that they published from bookshelves because they're like, this has too many lies in it. But this is what Ryan Walters wants kids to learn. So this is what he was bragging about. This is what he wanted kids to learn. It's very, very disturbing. But again, I've made videos about all the things in the standards that were disturbing, and there's more. But here's where I want to go with this story. When he passed these changes, when he single-handedly got the Board of Education to vote through his changes, and the Republicans in the legislature didn't stop him, one of the things Democrats in Oklahoma, the 3 of them, pointed out is that if you make these standards the new default, it's going to be really hard to find textbooks that promote all this bullshit, because Oklahoma is not a big market. Texas, for example, has a reputation for being very influential in the textbook world, because if you make textbooks and you hire people to write them and you want to sell textbooks, you want to make sure your textbook is being used in Texas or California or a state that has a lot of students. By comparison, Oklahoma doesn't. It has like 700,000 students, which for these people, for the textbook makers, it's not a huge market. So the idea that they were going to make a textbook that caters to Ryan Walters' whims, which would mean rewriting their own textbooks to incorporate his lies, you're probably not going to find that. Because even if you're a right-wing textbook publisher, it's a lot of work to write a textbook that includes all of these lies and Christian nonsense, because you don't even know if anyone's going to buy it yet. And Oklahoma is not the place you go to test out your textbooks. So Democrats pointed out it's going to be really hard to find textbooks that work, which could mean a lot of schools won't have textbooks to use that align with these standards, right? So here's where they're at right now. There is a state textbook committee whose job is, right now, all the publishers who want to get in on the ground floor, they send the committee their textbooks. And it's the committee's job to go through the various textbooks, see if they align with the state standards, see if they meet all the other requirements that you would expect for any good textbook, and then make their recommendations. And they could theoretically say, you know what, we got these submissions and we endorse 8 different textbooks for US history. And the thing about their endorsement that matters is that in Oklahoma, the legislature has $33 million available for public schools if they want to buy textbooks that are on the approved list. And that's why this is a big deal. Because if the state textbook committee says, yes, this textbook is good, and a school district wants to buy new textbooks and they use something that's off that list, it's paid for by taxpayer money. It's good for the district. So then the question is, are they approving textbooks that do what Ryan Walters wants them to do? And let's say that happens. What happens if there is a textbook that perpetuates this garbage? What if a public school district says, no, we don't want to use those books because we don't want to lie to our students. We want them to actually get a good education. They can do that. They can buy their own textbooks, but they would have to pay for it some other way. And textbooks are expensive. So that's the dilemma here. Is the state going to approve actual quality textbooks, or are they going to approve garbage that school districts, some of them, might have to be stuck with because that's all that'll be paid for? So here's what's amazing about all this. There's a website, a news outlet called Oklahoma Watch, and this is an article that just appeared this week on Oklahoma Watch. The reporter is Jennifer Palmer. She's done a wonderful job over several years, I think, of documenting Ryan Walters and everything he's doing there. But basically, Oklahoma Watch got to look at all the textbooks that were submitted to the textbook committee so they can see what these publishers are now saying and whether they're incorporating what Ryan Walters wants. And there's a couple big revelations that I read about when I read that article. One of them is that one of the biggest publishers in the country, Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, they didn't even bother sending Oklahoma a textbook. I think they've basically written Oklahoma off as a lost cause. They're like, screw you. We're going to work with getting our book in the hands of students in other states. So they didn't even bother sending anything to the committee. There were two smaller publishers that said, we don't want to send Oklahoma anything either, because if we stick to the facts, if we stick to actual history, we know the committee is going to say no to our textbooks. And we're too small of a company. We can't afford like the headlines that say Oklahoma rejects company X's textbook. They're like, we don't want the headline. We don't want the headache. So they didn't bother submitting anything either. But among the companies that did send in books, it seems like they're doing the bare minimum to appease Ryan Walters. And that's kind of amazing. It seems like the textbook publishers sending books to be approved are not caving in to his demands. Look at this. Again, this is from Oklahoma Watch. Check this out. Regarding the 2020 election, for example, an advanced placement textbook titled By the People, A History of the United States, published by Pearson, which again, big textbook company, makes no mention of sudden batch dumps or mail-in ballot concerns. It states the Trump campaign submitted a total of 63 lawsuits claiming voter fraud, but none of them, including several that reached the Supreme Court, resulted in a finding for the campaign. Yeah, that's accurate. So it seems like, okay, we will address the controversy involving the election, but we're not fanning the flames of a conspiracy theory here. So good on them. That's fantastic. But that's not all. Look at this. Another textbook for high school students addresses claims of election fraud with this. Supporters of Trump's claim believe that mail-in balloting was not secure and allege that ballot counting was halted in key battleground states, accompanied by sudden batch dumps of unfavorable votes. With an unforeseen record number of voters in the election, determining the final vote count was challenging, but then check this out. So they incorporated everything in the standards. Investigations by numerous state and federal authorities determined there was no credible evidence to support such a claim. So they addressed it, and then they said, oh yeah, by the way, all of that is bullshit. An online version specifically for Oklahoma of the same textbook basically says the same thing. He claimed the 2020 election had been stolen through widespread fraud, even though numerous state and federal authorities determined there was no credible evidence to support such a claim. Beautiful. There's another textbook from McGraw-Hill, another big textbook publisher, and look what they say as well. At the very end, these stories were anecdotes, personal stories, and they did not prove there were widespread problems. So basically, the big companies that make textbooks that did submit options for approval, they did what they had to do in addressing what Ryan Walters wanted them to address. They mentioned like the conspiracies about the election in 2020, but they also make clear all of that is bullshit. Yeah, Trump crazy people believe that stuff. Check, check, check. But also none of it has any merit. And that's a win-win situation right there. You're doing what the state wants, but also not lying to children. So that's a big deal, and you love to see it. By the way, that last McGraw-Hill textbook, they also said COVID originated in Wuhan, China, which is true, but they didn't mention anything about a lab. They're not getting into that. There's no evidence for that. So great. Now, what about the Bible? Because Ryan Walters made a big deal of shoving the Bible into every aspect of social studies curriculum. According to this Oklahoma Watch article, only one publisher included the Bible in their books. And it was a curriculum for elementary students where there was a mention of David and Goliath. But get this, you know how they did that? This is the passage in a first grade lesson titled Big Ideas from History. Look at what they say. It reads, the Hebrews told stories. Stories. One story was about David, a boy. He had to fight Goliath, a giant man. He won. People use this story when they talk about facing a big problem. So I love this, one, because they say, yeah, the Hebrews made shit up. Here's an example of it. But also, they very clearly use the David and Goliath story. Yes, it's a Bible story, but they say, oh, by the way, there's a saying, there's a metaphor that people use. You should know where that comes from and like what they're talking about. And I'm okay with that. I think it's good to be culturally literate in that sense. But it seems like the textbook publishers are not like throwing in Bible verses like this is some teen Bible somewhere. It's fantastic. So basically, here's where we're at. The companies that publish textbooks are not playing along with Ryan Walters. At best, the only thing that might make Ryan Walters happy is that some of these companies have online versions of their textbooks, and they allow teachers, they give teachers the option of editing the material in case they want to incorporate some of their own materials into the textbook. So it's not like a PDF kids are just reading through. There's some room for teachers to, hey, you should check this out, watch this video, things like that. So maybe if they want to include the bullshit, they could do it, but the textbook publishers aren't doing it for them. So it is possible now that the state textbook committee, which I will show you right here, it's like on the state's website. This is the textbook committee. Like Ryan Walters is one of the chair people. Right under him, Kendra Wesson is one of his allies. But then there's like these 12 other people who are not necessarily loyal to Ryan Walters. So even his ally is just one vote out of like 13. They have to decide which of these textbooks they're going to approve. And the rules that they adhere to is that the textbooks do not have to perfectly align with Oklahoma social studies standards in order to be approved. The standards are a suggestion. But if the textbook companies are like, screw you, those books can still be approved. And if by chance some right-wing group like PragerU submits material that perfectly aligns with Ryan Walters' wishes, the districts are not obligated to use it, even if the committee greenlights it. So that'll be interesting to see what they do now. Because Ryan Walters has tried so hard to get people to believe these right-wing conspiracies, and educators are pissed, and educated parents are pissed, and so are educated students. But we didn't know what the textbook companies were going to do because they're in it for the money. And it seems like even they're not playing along. I find this interesting. There was an article published just about 6 weeks ago. And look at what Kendra Wesson said at the time. Wesson said the state textbook committee won't have any issues finding textbooks that align with the new social studies standards, even with the new content that has made headlines. We're not going to have a problem there at all, she said. Well, yeah, they're not having a problem because none of the textbook companies are playing ball with them. So Wesson can approve them or not approve them. It doesn't matter. We'll see. I love that the publishers are doing this. But again, keep in mind, this isn't just, there is a potential problem here, which is if the committee doesn't approve these textbooks, schools are going to have to find a way to deal with not having, they can't purchase the books if nothing has been approved. And if the only thing that has been approved is like PragerU, the school districts are going to have to decide, do we want the free textbooks that have lies, or do we have to fundraise to get textbooks and teach things another way? Or maybe we won't use a textbook at all, but that does make life harder for the educators in this situation. What I hope happens is that the Oklahoma Supreme Court steps in really soon and says, Ryan Walters' standards are illegal, unconstitutional. And if they do that, they could say, just use the old standards until Ryan Walters comes up with something better. And that would be the best case scenario here. I don't know how long it's going to take for the Supreme Court to weigh in, but all of this is happening because Ryan Walters does not care about education. his job is caring about education, just like Linda McMahon. But you have these people nominated, confirmed by Republicans who absolutely hate public education, and they will do anything in their power to destroy it. And Ryan Walters has gotten as far as anyone has in his state. He treats himself like a king there, but it's good to see people are not playing along. All right, I'm going to stop there for now. Let me look through any of these comments. We will see. I'll try to rush through these. I apologize if I miss something. This is why I need Den so much. Someone mentioned this. Thank you for pointing this out. Oklahoma is ranked 49 out of 50 when it comes to education. And I've said before, I think Ryan Walters has a goal of making them number one if you rank them backwards. Anything else here before I move on? It might be harder to get to your questions today compared to the past. All right, I think I'm going to move forward. I see this question. Thank you for the donation. Did you see the guy dressed as the guy you meet at the crossroads to sell your soul? I don't know if you are referring to my book I can't point in mirror image. I sold my soul on eBay. That's a book I wrote a while back. And nope, nothing about meeting anybody like that. It's a metaphor. It was a good time. If you're interested, you can go look up that book. Okay, I'm going to jump to the next story. Give me a second to pull this up and delete a bunch of tabs. All right. Let's see here. Okay, let me introduce you to this guy right here. His name is Luke Ash. It says it right behind his face. He's a pastor. He's from Louisiana. And, you know, there's nothing conservative Christians love more than pretending to be martyrs when they're not. And Luke Ash is the latest example of this. Basically, this dude has a job as a pastor of a small Baptist church, but he also has a second job as a technician in the East Baton Rouge Parish Library, or at least he did until very recently. And the way he explains the story is that he was having a conversation with a coworker at the library, and they were both talking about a brand new hire at their library. And the coworker he was talking to said, like, I'm paraphrasing here, but said, Luke, you're referring to this person using the wrong pronoun. I think he was calling her she, but this person might be transgender and went by he. So Luke Ash was misgendering this person. And when he was corrected, Luke Ash said, I refuse to use those preferred pronouns. Okay, but like, this isn't church. This is your workplace, and there are rules about this. Not that like you have to accept trans people in the workplace, but that you have to treat your coworkers, colleagues with respect. And he didn't want to do that. So the day after this conversation, he was basically reprimanded by his boss. And then they said, listen, this is your warning. You have to respect your colleagues. And calling them by their name and their pronouns, like, that's a respectful thing to do. If you don't like it, fine, save it for home. But like at work, you treat them with dignity and respect. And he said, I will not do that. I refuse to respect my trans colleague. And then he was fired, as he should have been. And there's an easy way to describe what happened to Luke Ash. He disrespected his colleagues. He was being a bad employee. And then he got fired after he said, I'm not going to stop being a dick to my colleagues. Like, he was warned about the consequences. He didn't give a damn, and then he lost his job. That's what should have happened. it looks like the library gave him enough warning about it and he just didn't care. So how do you think Christians are spinning this? Conservative Christians are acting like this is the next bigot baker or florist or football coach. They are pretending this guy was punished because he's Christian. That's how they are spinning this. They don't care if he's like a perpetual asshole at work. They think Jesus's most important demand is you disrespect your colleagues. It doesn't matter that he violated the code of conduct or anything like that. And this is interesting. This is from a news article about all this. Check this out. Here we go. I know it's tiny font, but it says here, Ash worked at the library for fewer than 6 months. He was fired Thursday after having a conversation with a coworker about another coworker, blah, blah, blah. We've talked about that. And he said, I refused to use preferred pronouns through the course of conversation. They got back with me on Thursday morning by giving me the dismissal. And then kudos to this news outlet. They say the policy says the library provides an atmosphere in which all employees are welcomed, accepted, and respected. It also says all employees have the right to be addressed by their proper pronouns. What does Luke Ash say about that? I believe there are religious convictions and there are other kinds of convictions. And when those things are in contradiction with each other, there has to be given preference for one or the other. Okay, then priority goes to be a good colleague at your workplace, because if your religion tells you you're supposed to be a jerk, your religion sucks. I mean, that's the bottom line. The library's job is to make sure everyone is welcome and respected. Their job is to create a good work environment, not promote your personal dickishness as a religion. So this guy is so mad that the library got rid of him. But the fact is, no matter how hard he is trying to be a victim, we know he's the bully here. Like, at the very least, I wish this guy would just admit out loud, kind of like that dude in the Jubilee Medi Hassan clip, just admit your beliefs say you need to be an asshole. I wish that was the case. Just say, my religion requires me to treat certain people like crap, and don't hide behind, well, I'm a Christian. How could you do this to me? He wasn't fired because he's Christian. This is Louisiana. I promise you there are other Christians who work at the library. He wasn't fired because he's Christian. He's fired because he's a shitty employee. And anyway, there's a couple things about this story that surprised me. One is that he's only been working at this library for 6 months, according to that article. But the other is if you go to the church's website and you find this guy on the church's website, look at what it says here. Luke Ash, lead pastor. Pastor Ash began preaching at Stevendale Baptist Church on March 2nd, 2025. He's only been a pastor there for like 3-4 months too. Like, it seems, this is me being fully conspiratorial here. Part of me wonders, of all the jobs he could have gotten, let's say his family just moved to Louisiana or something. I get why he's the new pastor at this church. Maybe that's why they moved there. But if he's looking for a job to supplement his probably very small income at the church, why get a job at a place that you know is probably going to be contentious for you? Because conservative Christians like him don't have a good track record of working with other human beings outside their bubble. And part of me wonders if he decided to work there instead of, say, as a truck driver or a tradesman or something like that. Did he go to work at the library specifically because he knew things would end the way they have ended? And then he could use it to elevate his own platform and to maybe file a lawsuit or something like that. Again, this is me being conspiratorial. I admit this, but I'm kind of wondering, because the first thing this guy did after he got fired is he ran basically to all the right-wing outlets. And guess what? They're all supporting him now. Check this out. This is from Louisiana's Attorney General, Liz Murrill. Louisiana law prohibits discrimination based on religion in the workplace. This was a public employee in a taxpayer-funded public library. Government can't force you to violate your conscience or deeply held religious beliefs. This isn't California or New York. Oh, honey. You wish. In Louisiana, a Christian has rights just like anyone else. It's always weird to me that these people think there are like 0 Christians who live in California or New York. I promise you, there are literally more Christians living in those blue states than in Louisiana, just sheer raw numbers. But anyway, she's wrong. She's the attorney general, but she doesn't know the law. This guy wasn't fired because of his religion. He was fired because he violated the library's code of conduct and was warned about it and then said, I refuse to be a good employee. That's why he was fired. If you're an atheist and you say, yeah, I'm going to be a dick to my colleagues because that's what my conscience tells me to do, you should also be fired. Had nothing to do with his Christianity. Just because he wants to blame Christianity for why he's a dick doesn't mean he was fired for his Christianity. Now, what about the governor of Louisiana? He chimed in too. This is Jeff Landry. What did he say here? Louisianans should never lose their job because they refuse to lie. Louisiana is the real world. I don't even know what the hell that's supposed to mean. And in the real world, preferred pronouns don't exist, only biological ones. In Louisiana, the grammar rules have not changed. People still have pronouns. Again, all of these people are just finding different ways of saying being a Christian means you're allowed to be an asshole to your colleagues. That's what this boils down to. That's what conservative Christianity means to these Republicans. It means you could just be a horrible person. Speaking of horrible people, there's also libs of TikTok. That right-wing troll. Meet Luke Ash. He was just fired from a public library in Louisiana for refusing to use a coworker's preferred pronouns because it goes against his religious beliefs. This is insane. This library receives our tax dollars. Get Luke his job back or defund this library. Like, these people hate public spaces so much because in the real world, which I'm told is in Louisiana, you have a mixture of people with different religious beliefs and political ideologies. And if you're a right-wing extremist, you cannot function outside your bubble. Everyone just makes fun of you. Everyone thinks you're batshit insane. And it only works when you're in your bubble. Like, I'm sure these people are heroes in the Christian world, but in the real world, which is in Louisiana, they're just dicks. I don't know. The most interesting response came from Tony Perkins, who is the head of the Family Research Council, which is a Christian hate group. Tony Perkins said this on his website. Let me share this with you. It's somewhat ironic that the library has a policy not to fine patrons who do not return books on time or return them at all, and yet they fire employees who refuse to engage in forced speech and play along with a lie. I'll stop there because those two things have nothing to do with each other. Yeah, the library has grace for patrons who might have a reason they didn't return a book on time. I think that's a nice thing. If they can make that work, good for them. That doesn't mean they have to extend grace to employees who demand the right to treat everyone else they don't like shit, which is what this Christian pastor wants to do. Not the same thing at all. Now, I'll get to that other thing in just a second that was highlighted there. But one of the things that was mentioned when Tony Perkins was talking to Luke Ash is Luke Ash was like, at this library, you guys, they make certain books harder to find. It turns out they don't purchase every book ever written. He specifically mentioned like Pete Hegseth's book, which it doesn't exist in this particular library. But you know what Luke Ash's job is? If you're a patron of the library and you want that book and your library doesn't have it, it is Luke Ash's job to facilitate like when other libraries in your system have the book and they can transfer it to your library. You know what I mean? I do this all the time. I might go to my local library and say, I want this book. And they say, hey, we don't have the book, but there's another library in our network that does. So we'll get it from them so you can have it. It's wonderful. I love that system. Luke Ash's job is to facilitate that. So Luke Ash said to Tony Perkins, yeah, there are some books they don't have. And that's like cancel culture right there. They're like, these people say they don't want to ban books, and yet they didn't purchase every book ever written. Can you believe that? And Tony Perkins who's never stepped foot in a library, pretty much, is like, what? How can that be? Your little tiny library doesn't have every book ever made. That's insane. So back to what Tony Perkins was saying here. During our interview, Luke described how the library selectively restricts access to books they disagree with, while accusing others of banning books. I watched their conversation, their interview, and Tony Perkins is like, so they don't have Donald Trump's book? And Luke Ash is like, oh, well, actually, they do have Donald Trump's book, but he wrote The Art of the Deal before he was president, so it's not really the same. Like, Tony Perkins was so desperate to find an example of a famous popular book written by a Republican that the library doesn't have. And Luke Ash is like, oh, we do have that book, but we don't have this other one that wasn't even good. And then what does he say? They think it's a sin to ban books, but they, in effect, ban them by not buying them or making them hard to find. If you can pretend a book doesn't exist, that's even more effective. This is a dumb thing to say, and I don't even work at a library. Here's how this works. There's a bunch of times when I have wanted a particular new book that I knew was about to be released. And instead of purchasing it, because I didn't know if I wanted to buy it, I asked my local library, hey, do you have this book? And the answer was no. And there's a form I can fill out on the library's website where I say, hey, can you maybe purchase this book? And there are reasons for this. Because if it's a popular book, maybe it's been reviewed in the New York Times, maybe it's written by someone who's in the news, the library can say, oh, that's a pretty good reason for us to justify purchasing that book, so it's in our system. And every time I have made those requests, the library has responded by getting me that book. Because I wasn't asking for some obscure out of print, it's going to cost you a ton of money. It's like, oh, hey, there's a famous person who wrote this book and you don't have it, but I want it. Can you get it for me? And they're like, oh, yeah, that seems like a legit request. So that's not cancel culture because they didn't have it. And by the way, not every library purchases every book. There is a system involved with like, which books do we need? What's going to be the interest? Are a lot of people wanting to check out this book? If there's heavy interest in a book, they're going to buy multiple copies. If they think no one's going to buy it, maybe they say, we don't need to purchase it unless someone asks us for it. And if someone does want it, we'll get it from our network. That's how libraries work. This guy doesn't seem to understand it. He thinks like liberals are banning books. So my point is, these people are dumb. That's where I'm going with this. Luke Ash has gotten like all the conservatives in on this. He actually included, there was a letter sent. It's horrible font, but like all these pastors sent a letter to the library's board of directors where, look at the beginning. We write to you as pastors and Christian leaders from across East Baton Rouge Parish to express our deep concerns over the termination of Mr. Luke Ash, a fellow believer and public employee who was fired for refusing to use preferred pronouns that contradict biological reality and biblical truth. Yes, he's an asshole. Let us be clear. This is not merely an HR dispute. This is a First Amendment issue, a blatant infringement upon the God-given conscience and First Amendment protections of religion and speech. All of that is bullshit. Look, there is no First Amendment right to be an asshole in the workplace. That's it. When you're at work and you're working for the government, which a library job is, you check your personal beliefs at the door. There are some rights you have, sure, but if your religion, for example, you're an evangelical Christian and you believe you got to preach the word of God and evangelize and get people to convert, but you happen to work as a public school teacher, you don't have a right to say, hey, kids, put away your math textbooks. I got to tell you something. You don't. You don't have a right to do everything you want just because you happen to belong to a certain faith. That's what Luke Ash seems to think he's allowed to do because he works at a library. That's not a First Amendment issue. The library has a neutral set of policies that applies to everyone. And if Luke Ash wants to go home and spread anti-trans BS at church, he is allowed to do that. But when he's at work, he has to respect people. You may recall that a couple of weeks ago, I did a story about a different pastor who has said vile things in sermons. He has said the government should execute LGBTQ people. And that guy has a job as an IT dude working for the government of Oklahoma City. And this was news because I don't think people realized in Oklahoma City that, oh no, the guy we just hired also has a side gig where he says horrible things. And when reporters asked the government, like, are you going to fire this guy? Their response is basically, well, at work, he treats everyone with respect. So we really can't do anything unless he treats people differently or says any of this stuff at work. But for now, when he's on the clock, he does his job. And that's what's going on with Luke here. He thinks he was fired even because he has these Christian beliefs. But the fact is, unlike the guy that works in Oklahoma City, Luke was being a Christian asshole to a colleague in the workplace. And the library said, you can't do that. And Luke said, but I wanna. I like Jesus. Therefore, anything I want must happen. And the library said, that's not how anything works. And they fired him. And these pastors are like, that's unfair. No, it's not unfair at all. I also wanted to show you that Tony Perkins invited Luke to come to one of his like prayer events, and it led to this picture. There is Luke in the middle of this thing that I'm sure looks normal to right-wing Christians, but if you're not in that bubble, it's just insane behavior from adult humans, which is they're all putting their hands on him in prayer, because apparently prayer only works if like you've connected body parts, because God has to transfer through body parts. Otherwise, prayers don't work. I don't understand where this is in the Bible, but it's got to be somewhere. And again, what are they doing for this guy? They're praying for him, not because he's sick and dying of some disease, but because he really, really wants the chance to be an asshole at work. And they're all praying that he gets his job back so he can treat his colleagues like shit. These people are so fucking weird. There's one other thing that I found interesting. Let's say you wanted to be at the very least, if you are Luke and you want your job back, I would think the savvy thing to do is say, look, I want the library to succeed. And I think they're discriminating against Christians. I want to be there because I want to help them be respectful to people of all faiths. I want the library to succeed. But he's not doing that. In fact, he wrote a letter to the mayor of East Baton Rouge. This is according to a website called the Baptist Message. And they call their mayors mayor president. I don't know why that is. Doesn't matter. But look at this. Ash shared an email with the Baptist Message that he sent July 10th to City of Baton Rouge, Parish of East Baton Rouge, Mayor President Sid Edwards, outlining the events surrounding his firing and other concerns. He's basically tattling about the library to the mayor. But I'm just going to scroll down to this last bit here. What did he tell this guy? Ash urged the mayor president to consider even more drastic budget actions, asking Edwards to exert his influence to reform the library or defund them. This is why I have this conspiracy theory that this has been his goal all along. This guy's not interested in making the library better. He wants to work there so we can be on the inside and help destroy it. And he's literally writing to the mayor of the town saying, you know what you should do now that I've been fired? You should take away their money. Because I want everyone in this community to suffer. Because if I don't get my way as a Christian bigot, I'm taking everyone down with me. That's why you know this guy is not a sympathetic victim here. He is a bully who I think took this job at a library so he could destroy it from the inside. It's the same reason I think Donald Trump appointed all these horrible people to run different cabinet positions, because he's not interested in improving the Department of Education. He wants to destroy it. How do you do that? You bring in someone who has no educational experience, but just knows how to ruin things. Why do you put Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense? Because you're not interested in defense. You just want someone to screw everything up. That's how these people operate. So, for what it's worth, at the moment, no group has filed a lawsuit against the library. And to me, the only reason that's happened is because I think even right-wing legal groups are like, we're not going to win this one because you got fired for being an asshole, not for being a Christian. But even, like, what is this? This one's from Franklin Graham. Check this out. Even Franklin Graham is urging right-wing groups to do this. Look at this at the very end. I hope Alliance Defending Freedom will bring a case against the library so that this won't happen to the next Christian who will not bend on their biblical beliefs. Franklin Graham, one of the most popular people on Facebook, is like, hey, right-wing group, you should sue the library system. That's not what you do if you actually want the libraries to succeed. And by the way, the more disturbing comment came from Harmeet Dillon, who is someone who works at the Department of Justice underneath Pam Bondi. Look at this. After Tony Perkins shared his interview, there's Harmeet Dillon saying, what? So it's possible even the Department of Justice is going to get involved because they will do anything, one, to distract from Epstein, but two, that what they love so much is not defending civil rights, but defending the right of Christians to be jerks in public spaces. That's what makes them happy. That's what their base loves. That's what Trump voters love. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Department of Justice gets involved with this too. I think I'll pause there for this story. Give me a second to look through some of these comments. I appreciate the donations, by the way. New story dropped. Doctor denies woman prenatal care because she's unmarried. I think I saw this clip. This was a woman at a town hall meeting, I think in Tennessee. And I don't know that there was detailed information about the woman or her care yet, but that is one I have seen. I'm looking at that one to see if it's anything I ought to talk about. I will check that out. And I appreciate this too. If someone misgenders me, I will make sure to call that man Mary. If it's a woman, I name them Dan. Respect works both ways. This is the thing I don't get. It's not hard to call someone by their preferred pronoun or their preferred name. If a woman gets married and changes her last name, I mean, kids in school do this all the time. They got to get used to calling their teacher a different name. It happens. If your name is, I talked about this on the podcast earlier, if your name is Jessica and you go by Jess or Jessie, it's not weird to say, oh, that's not what I go by. I go by this. And then that's what you expect your colleagues to call you. And if they screw it up, okay, fine. But if they purposely, after you have told them this is what I go by, if they continue to use the wrong thing, why? Now you're just being a jerk for no reason. I'm not asking you about your naming preferences. I don't know why it's so hard for some people to just say, oh, you want respect? I'm not going to give it to you. But apparently being a conservative Christian means that is exactly what you do. Let me see if there's anything else here before I move on. Just looking through these. Sorry if I miss your comments today once again. All right, I'm going to skip down. All right, I hope I didn't miss anything. I apologize. Let me jump to a different story here. Oh, I think you will like this one. After I delete a bunch of things. Okay. By the way, total side note here. This weekend, if any of you like crossword puzzles, there is a virtual competition going on Sunday. It's called BOSWORD, Boswords. I'll see if I could find the website. It's BOSWORDS, Boswords.org. And it's a virtual competition. And, I do it all the time. I'm not the fastest solver, but I like solving the puzzles. And if you're interested, I wrote one of the puzzles in this year's tournament. So check it out if you're interested. It's a fun thing to do. Okay, I am jumping to a different story here. Let me pull everything up. Okay. So in 2023, in the city of Monroe, North Carolina, they had a mayoral election. And this is a town of about 35,000 people, but the turnout in an off-year election was just ridiculously low. So the mayoral race, it came down to about 1,000 votes for like the top contenders. And this particular town's mayoral race made headlines nationally because even though there were like 5 or 6 candidates on the ballot, there were 2 people who got more votes than anybody else. And those 2 people were tied. And this is the way the Associated Press described it at the time. Coin flip decides mayor of North Carolina City after tie between 2 candidates. Very interesting. And again, look at the date line here, November of 2023. But look at what they wrote right here. Okay, so the 2 guys are these 2 dudes. I'll highlight this as well. Robert Burns and Bob Janacek, I think. They each received 970 votes in the race to become mayor of Monroe. There had been 5 names on the ballot. Burns won the coin toss. And at Friday's Union County Elections Board meeting, the 2 men waived their right to seek a recount. Basically, state law says the outcomes of tied races are determined by lot. So at the coin toss, Janacek called heads, the coin landed tails, and you could see here the 2 men shook hands and hugged briefly. The board then voted to declare Burns the winner. Okay, fine. Like, that's a cute little story, and that is not necessarily a weird thing. You know, if it's a small town and there's a tied race and they double checked and they're like, we didn't screw up, we don't think, a candidate could say, I want to recount, but it takes money and you're asking like a staff of 1, can you go through all this? You know what I mean? It's not like a statewide presidential election where there's a lot of people working, you know? So these 2 guys said, you know what, screw it. We're tied. We accept that. Just flip a coin. We'll accept the outcome either way. And they did. And this guy named Robert Burns won the election. And that should have been the last we heard about this story. Because you would think these 2 guys are more or less the same. They seem like they're buddy-buddy about all this. What's the big deal? But here's why I bring this up. In the 2 years, or at least a year and a half, since Robert Burns has been elected mayor by a coin flip of Monroe, North Carolina, he has done like everything in his power to turn his office into a conduit for Christianity and Christian nationalism. And when I was reading that AP article, they had one line in there that I'm like, I don't think this would have caught me by surprise when I read it at the time. It's been an awesome run so far. And now it's all in God's hands, Burns said in a social media video minutes before the coin flip. Like, yeah, that wouldn't have fazed me because a Christian guy saying, all right, whatever happens with this coin flip, it's what God wants. Like, all right, I think that's silly, but that's not weird. But it turns out that should have been an omen because what this guy has done since then is insane. Let me tell you some of the ways this guy's been insane as a Christian nationalist in this town. Here's one example. He has a YouTube page where it says like Robert Burns, mayor of Monroe. This is his official mayoral page. And this is something he posted last year. And it's just a screenshot, but you could see this here. It's Monroe Prayer Night 2024. And that right there is Robert Burns. So he's promoting prayer night in the city, which is a weird thing to do on your Robert Burns mayor of Monroe page, right? That's a weird thing to do. But again, maybe you think that's not that big of a deal. If you watch that video, by the way, he tells the audience, Jesus alone is worthy. And that's why we're here today. Which I don't care if he was doing that in his personal time. Why is he doing that as mayor? Here's another thing he did. And this is in a news article. Yeah, check this out. He also listed City Hall's address and phone number as a National Day of Prayer contact. And he endorsed 2 political candidates, neither of which he should be doing as the mayor of a town. Why are you putting City Hall's phone and address as like a National Day of Prayer event? That's not your thing to do. If an outside group says we want to use City Hall and we want to reserve the space because we want to have a little thing that day, there's a process for that. Satanists do it. Atheist groups do it over the winter time. Like, that part isn't weird. But why is the mayor taking the lead here? He shouldn't be doing that. What else is there? Here's the thing. On a podcast last year, he interviewed the Christian nationalist, a Christian nationalist named Micah Beckwith, who has since become the lieutenant governor of Indiana. This is right before he got into that role. But one of the things Beckwith said on that podcast is, and I'm quoting here, the atheist, the Muslim, the Jew, the Mormon, the Christian, anyone will be better off if we root our society in Judeo-Christian principles, because liberty is not man's idea, it's God's idea. That's what Beckwith said. And what did Burns say in response? Like, nothing. He's like, yeah, that sounds about right. And then later, Beckwith also said that the people advocating for church-state separation are, quote, the LGBTQ community trying to support Hamas. The hell? Like, no and no. I don't know what that dude is talking about, but again, what did Burns say in response? Nothing. Then there are other culture war battles. For example, last June, this is what Robert Burns did. He issued a proclamation recognizing and commemorating the anniversary of the overturning of Roe v. Wade. On city letterhead, it's a bunch of things that say, hey, remember 2 years ago when we put women's lives in danger because we're good Christians? Yeah, that was awesome, wasn't it? Let's keep doing that. Which again, I don't care what this guy's position is. He's a mayor. He has no reason to take a public stance on like abortion. He's not writing laws. His job as mayor is like bring businesses to your town and fix the potholes. That's what a mayor does. So why is this dude issuing proclamations about Roe v. Wade? That doesn't make any sense. But he did it. He has the seal of the city on it. This particular stunt of his made people in the town so mad. Look at this headline right here. This is from last summer. Monroe mayor censured after Roe v. Wade reversal proclamation. The Monroe City Council voted 5-2 to censure Mayor Robert Burns in a meeting on Tuesday because he made that proclamation. What did he say? I don't take it back at all, Burns said after the vote. I wear this censure with a badge of honor, as a badge of honor, whatever. He doesn't know the words. But like, yeah, of course he's proud of it. But they took away his right to that. They were mad about that proclamation and they took away his right to make future proclamations too. So that's another thing he's done that made everybody mad. So guess what he did this past June? Now that he's no longer allowed to make proclamations, he just posted a message on Facebook basically saying the same thing. And this June, what he wrote is that abortion mills push women in crisis through the process, even when in tears, never telling them about post-abortion trauma, which is all a lie. Like, they're abortion mills? No, those are not a thing. They're not forcing women to have abortions against their will. There is no post-abortion trauma. That's not a thing. It only exists in the broken brains of like right-wing nut jobs. Most people who get abortions are like, yeah, that's what I wanted. I'm good now. And if you don't want to have an abortion, guess what? Don't get one. So here's another thing that this guy also did. Oh, I should also say, he started issuing proclamations because he can't do official ones. He started doing this. This is something he posted on Facebook. It still says City of Monroe. It still says Mayor. It still says from the desk of Mayor Burns. This is a proclamation about Juneteenth, which I'm glad he even knows what that is. But also, this is very much a, you know what's awesome about Juneteenth? It says that all people are children of God. It's still like a religious proclamation. But look at this fine print right up here. The content or views expressed in this message are strictly my own and not the City of Monroe. Which is a weird thing to say when you have like the City of Monroe in the upper left of your screen and from the desk of Mayor Burns. Like, you can't hide behind the fine print there. I'll show you one other thing he did. This is from, I think, just like a week ago. Oh, yeah, this is from July 14th. This is something he posted on Facebook. Remember, we talked about how the IRS is no longer enforcing the Johnson Amendment, meaning pastors can endorse candidates from the pulpit, and the IRS under Trump is like, we're not going to come after you. What did Robert Burns say after that? Monroe pastors and church leaders, your voice matters now more than ever. Blah, blah, blah. What does he say at the end? Let's build a stronger Monroe grounded in faith and freedom. Reach out. I'm here to partner with you. Why is he partnering with religious groups? And then look at this. Pastors and churches can get involved. And then if I remove myself here, Robert Burns, mayor of Monroe, North Carolina. Like, this dude does not know how to separate his job from his private life, because everything he said there, he could totally do in his personal capacity. He cannot do it as a mayor. But this is what this guy is doing. So anyway, at the end of all this, where are we at with this guy now? Earlier this month, this city council has had it with this dude. They're so pissed off that he's taken this position that's supposed to be about helping the community and made it all about himself. But this is from July 8th. The Monroe City Council on Tuesday held a meeting and voted on a no confidence measure for the mayor. In a 5-2 vote, 5 city council members voted in favor of the no confidence resolution for Mayor Robert Burns, with 2 members voting against it. They're basically saying we don't have confidence that this guy can do his job. And they officially took a vote on this because they're so pissed off at him. And again, it's a symbolic move. The guy still has a job as a mayor, but it's their way of saying this guy cannot do his job. Hey, community, you need to know this mayor sucks. And he's only mayor because he won a damn coin toss. By the way, I looked at this dude's personal Twitter feed. It's nothing but right-wing conspiracy theories and grievances. I will show you a thing. This is something he posted on Facebook, but it's also disturbing. Look what he calls his critics. To the narcissistic beta males and snowflake complainers, just a reminder, you keep reminding me why I'm doing what I'm doing. Thank you. Happy New Year. Listen. I have a lot of opinions about things. If suddenly I became mayor, conservative Christians would be in my constituency. I am not going to use my platform to criticize them. I work for them now, you know? But this dude who has no idea of how to be a responsible government official is like, oh, you're giving me a new platform because I want a coin toss? Let me shit on everybody who criticizes me. That's the best use of my time. I'm a Christian role model. What a complete asshole. My favorite thing about that particular post is that a reporter asked him about that. Beta males and snowflake complainers. Monroe Mayor Robert Burns continues to dodge questions. Look at this right here. This is amazing. Shortly after discovering the post, which he made publicly, they didn't discover it, this reporter, Austin Walker, reached out to Mayor Burns and spoke with him over the phone about his choice of words. Burns said he didn't have time for an in-person or Zoom interview. He's mayor. What do you think he has time for? People? No. Walker asked Burns if he could record the phone conversation, but Burns then declined comment. Burns added he didn't have time to listen or deal with negative comments. Right, because he's too busy making them himself. This guy he knows how to dish it out. He doesn't know how to take it. More importantly, he can't even defend himself when he's outside of his bubble for 2 seconds. All the reporter asked is hey, why did you call people those names? You're the mayor. And Robert Burns is like, what? No, I don't want to talk about, go away. Totally irresponsible. By the way, that's beta male behavior right there. Is there anything else about this dude? I should tell you that when a local diner began hosting an all-ages drag brunch show, it was in the wake of all those anti-drag outcries. This is before Burns was mayor, but he was one of the protesters falsely claiming that the diner was sexualizing our children here in Monroe, and people are waking up to that. They were not. That's not what anything happens. There were a bunch of lawsuits in the wake of that controversy. And since 2023, I believe that restaurant only does adults only drag shows. But as mayor, Burns has tried to get all drag shows for adults and shows of all ages. He's tried to get all drag shows classified as adult entertainment, even if they're not, which, by the way, could, if they had allowed that to happen, that could have led to additional First Amendment lawsuits. But thankfully, the city council's like, no, we are not knocking down drag shows and embroiling ourselves in these battles. I mean, if you're trying to get all drag shows canceled, there are Shakespeare plays that could not be performed either. I want to show you one other thing. Robert Burns was still talking about the drag shows recently because he sat for an interview with a Christian nationalist named William Wolfe. And these guys talked. William Wolfe is like, hey, Robert Burns, tell me that story about how you became mayor. And let me play you this clip just so you could see what he sounds like when he's talking to a guy who agrees with him.
And these news broadcasters would come to me and to Bob and say, hey, listen, you know what happens? It's a coin toss. What would you call if it was a coin toss? And I'm like, man, I wouldn't. There's not going to be a coin toss. But, you know, I would call heads. So that day when we tied, they said we had to sign over our right for a recount. Okay, so we could get it done right then and there. And I agreed. And then the other guy, Bob, he agreed. And then I walk up to the middle. They said, we don't have a provision for who calls it. And I literally was about to say heads. And I went up to him and I said, Bob, you call it. And then Bob calls heads. And they flip the silver dollar. It hits the desk. It rolls to our side of the room. At the time prior to that, I'd given an individual that you and I know my camera. And so she's recording it too. So there's no election interference. We didn't touch it, nothing. It rolls around the room, but doesn't hit anything. Doesn't even hit the coffee cup that it lands beside, flips over his tails. And It was God. It was God's ordination. I knew it immediately. That was a mandate from him.
It was a mandate from him. That last little bit, I want a coin toss, and that means I can rule this town like I want a landslide victory. Like Ron DeSantis, I think, did the same thing. He became governor by a very tiny margin, I think, when he ran the first time for governor. But ever since, and because Florida has a Republican supermajority, he has run the state as if he won with like 99% of the votes. Donald Trump does the same thing. I know he won by more like this time around than in 2016, but both times, instead of saying, okay, I only won by a little bit, so I got to make sure I'm moderate or I'm moderating my policies, he's like, no, I'm going to act like I'm a dictator. And that's what this dude is doing on a much, much smaller scale, which is very disturbing. So anyway, that's what this dude is up to. I just want to remind you, all this is happening because in a city of over 30,000 people, the two guys who could have been mayor got 970 votes apiece. That is nothing. The turnout for that election was so low, and any one person who hadn't voted could have changed all this had they voted. But instead, because this guy won, he's just destroying some of the things that makes this town like hospitable to different people. I read a story when I was researching this story that they had held a Latin fest for Latinos, Latinas in the city, but it had very low attendance. Why is that? Because basically Monroe is one of these places that is now seen as unsafe for immigrants. And the last thing they wanted to do is go to the celebration of their heritage where who knows what ICE agents are going to pick them up or something. And that's not a Robert Burns thing. That's a Republican Trump thing. But Trump worshiping men like Burns are the public face of all this. He's not going out of his way to make sure outsiders are welcome. He's doing everything he can to make sure everyone knows you have to look like me, think like me, act like me, believe like me. Then you're welcome in this town. Everyone else, screw you. By the way, because of a law change in North Carolina, this guy should have been up for re-election in November of this year. But I think they changed it so that now they're going to do mayoral races on even numbered years to coincide with bigger races nationally. So Burns gets an extra year in office. He's not going to be up for re-election until 2026. But I'm just saying, listen, if you live in Monroe, you could vote for, like, I don't know who the other candidates are. I'm sure they have their own flaws, but you could vote for anybody else. And had one person who sat out in this mayoral election voted for the opponent, none of this would have happened. So elections matter, votes matter. That is especially true on local levels. So seriously, if you're not already on a list to get mail-in ballots, if you can, or you're not voting in your local elections, school board elections, local city government stuff, make sure you are registered and do that stuff. Those are the votes where, like, you really do make a difference. I'm going to check to see if there's anybody else here. I appreciate the comments. I like this. Beta male is code for saying that he's scared and insecure and needs to make himself feel strong. Seriously, anytime I hear like alpha male, beta male, anything else, I stop listening to the person who's saying it because they can't possibly be saying anything intelligent. Oh, thank you for this donation. What is the water drop looking thing right over there on your shelf? Love the bookshelf look. Thank you. This, I know how to point and mirror image. This is a Humanist Media Award that I recently got from the American Humanist Association. And as soon as they put it online, I hope I can share this with people, the speech I made when they gave me that award. But it was a really meaningful thing, Humanist Media Award from the American Humanist Association. Any other questions here? Just checking. Sorry if I'm missing your stuff today. All right, I am going to move on. I got two more stories for you and then I'll call it, but I think you will enjoy both of them. So I hope you stick around if you can. Okay, let's talk about Waterbury, Connecticut. The elected officials in the city of Waterbury can't seem to figure out what flags should be allowed to go up outside City Hall because the mayor of the town really wants to find a way to allow a Christian flag to go up while preventing the flags of groups he doesn't like. And the reason this is even an issue is because there is an activist by the name of Chaz Stevens, who I've talked about before. This is Chaz right over here. Basically, he really likes sticking it to local government officials when he thinks they're doing something that is inappropriate. And so in the case of Waterbury, you may also recall that the Supreme Court has basically issued a ruling a couple years ago that, I'm going to try to boil it down. It just says, look, if you allow flags to go up outside City Hall and they are religious, political, if you have an open forum and you allow outside groups to put up flags or request to have a flag put up, you cannot say no just because they are religious or political or anything like that. And so last year in Waterbury, when it was the National Day of Prayer in May, so this is 2024, a Christian group asked if they could put up a Christian flag. And if you're not familiar, this right here that I will show you, this is what the Christian flag looks like. They wanted to put this up outside City Hall, and the city said, yeah, that's fine. You could put that up. But shortly after that, Chaz came in. And Chaz said, well, I would like to put up a poster, flag as well. And this is the one he requested. Ministry of Chaz the Bropostle, the Church of Satanology, and Perpetual Soiree. Satan loves the First Amendment. And you can see at the top there, it's sponsored by Revolt Training, which is how Chaz tries to help other activists do the sort of shit he's doing. So Chaz wanted to get this flag up outside City Hall as well. And this, as you may imagine, caused a lot of consternation among city leaders. And so they quickly changed the rules. And they said from now on, no outside flags, no one can make any requests. And they shut down their open forum, which is fine, like, because you are treating everyone equally, even though you're doing it because a Satanist asked you to do it. But that meant this past May, when it was the Day of Prayer, Christians wanted to put their flag up. Guess what? They can't do it because there's no more open forum. So the mayor of the town of Waterbury, his name is Paul Pernerusky. He said there's only certain flags that are allowed to go up outside City Hall. The US flag, state flag, city flag, and like the flags of other countries. Maybe you have someone visiting and you want to honor them, you could put up a flag of another country. And then later on, he said we can also put up flags honoring federal holidays. So there's a flag for Juneteenth. We could put that up. But that still didn't allow for the Christian flag to go up. And that made Christians really mad. And one of the other things that happened then is this mayor is like, we got to figure out a way to allow the Christians to put up their flag. And this is actually something he submitted on like the city council's, I'm sorry, it's the board of aldermen in Waterbury. This is something he submitted to their agenda saying, I wonder if there's a way we could do this. And you could see he's requesting approval of a proposed resolution regarding display of flags on city property. Basically, he wants to figure out, is there a way that we could display certain flags as a forum, which ones are allowed, which ones are not. He just wants a policy that is a little looser than the one they have right now, but he's not quite sure of what that policy should be. So that was on the agenda for the Board of Aldermen. And what happened after that is, here's the bottom line. What is he trying to do? He wants to figure out if there's a way that it's okay for the Christian flag to go up, but it's not okay for a satanic flag or whatever you want to call whatever the hell Chaz submitted. He wants to find a way to block that one from going up. And he doesn't know how to do it. Is there a way to say yes to the Christians, but no to groups he doesn't like? Is there a way to do that legally? I mean, spoiler, the answer is no, but he's desperately trying to figure this out. And so last week they had their, I forgot if it's bi-weekly or monthly, but they had their Board of Aldermen meeting, and a bunch of Christians went during the public comment section of the meeting, and they said, we need a more inclusive policy that allows our Christian flag to go up. And eventually the mayor spoke up during the public comment section, and he's trying to tell this crowd, you guys, I am trying to figure out a way to let your flags go up, but I don't want the outsiders to go up. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And the thing is, I thought he would be very subtle about how he said that. He was not subtle. He makes it very clear, you guys are good, Satanists are bad, and there's got to be a way to like square this circle somehow. And by the way, Jesus is awesome. I'm going to play you a clip of what he said. I am shocked he was so blunt in what he was trying to do here.
As you know, the City Hall is a public facility, and so we do raise flags here on a regular basis, and the concern had come up earlier this year, something we hadn't faced before, but a push to raise flags that I think we would all agree are universally offensive to put up there. And so I'm trying to work with Corporation Counsel in a way to come up with a plan that allows us to continue to do some of what we've been doing, probably not all of it, but to be able to control what we put up there so that we're not going to be compelled by a court to raise Satan's flag over City Hall, because that is something I don't think any of us would want to happen. And there are other flags as well that I think we could find all equally offensive. So, because I want to be supportive. I fully believe the work that you're doing is going to make Waterbury a better place. I too am very religious. I belong to the Catholic Church, but I attend regularly. But I also, attend other churches here in the city as well. And I firmly believe that faith is going to be the basis. It's going to fix a lot of the problems Martin talked about today. I think it's the lack of that faith and that foundation in this community and across the country that is causing so many of the problems that we have today, and we have to try to return to that. So I think that's critically important.
There are so many things he said in that should be problematic for everybody. He said, we're not going to be compelled by a court to raise Satan's flag over City Hall, because that's something I don't think any of us want to happen. He also said there were other flags I think we could all find equally offensive. Go back, rewind this video a couple seconds, go look at the satanic flag, the Church of Satanology flag Chaz wanted to put up. What is offensive about that? Nothing. It's just, it mentions Satan, so this guy doesn't want it up there. He also says, I firmly believe faith is going to fix a lot of the problems that were talked about today. I think it's the lack of faith and that foundation in this community that's causing so many of the problems that we have today, which is just a ignorant insult against atheists and other non-theists out there. So this guy is openly saying religion good, non-religion bad. I like your flag. I don't like his flag. I want to figure out if there's a legal way to allow yours and reject theirs. And again, the answer is no. There's no way to do that. You're not going to figure it out. So stop trying. But again, just to state the obvious, the Satanology flag is not offensive. By the way, the Christian flag, I would argue, very much is. It's a flag that was flown on January 6th. It implies that non-believers will be tortured for all eternity. I mean, that's an offensive message to me. That's way more offensive than something that just says perpetual soiree. I do appreciate Chaz speaking out about this. This is something he told the local newspaper. It's really simple. My problem is boiled down to a bumper sticker, all or none. Not some, all or none. If they allow a Christian flag, a flag of the Druids, a flag of SpongeBob SquarePants, they are creating what is known as a limited public forum. And thank goodness we have this thing called the First Amendment. And the First Amendment is supposed to be the free flow of information, the free flow of thoughts. So if they put the Christian flag up there, they need to put the Church of Satanology flag up there. And if they don't, that proves my point, which is favoritism. And left unsaid is that if they do that, Chaz is going to sue. I did ask him what he thought about the mayor's speech that I just played for you. And what Chaz told me is that government neutrality is not optional. You don't get to fly one belief system's flag while blocking others without inviting a lawsuit. And trust me, I bring receipts, lots of them. So he's going to be watching what the mayor and the aldermen do next. I will too. And I mean, for their sake, they better hope that whatever policy they have is fair to everyone. Otherwise, they're going to find out that it's not in court. All right, I'm going to pause there for a bit. And I hope I'm going to go ahead and just move to the last story just for the sake of time. Sorry if I'm missing any questions here. And give me 1 second to set this up. I don't think you've heard this last story. I haven't posted about it at all, but I'm going to tomorrow. But I think you'll find this one very interesting. All right, closing out some tabs. Okay, last story. Okay, let me show you a picture of this Christian couple. This is Eli and Caitlin Regalado, and he's a pastor. She's his wife. They're from Colorado, and they're in big trouble. And I will tell you more specifics in just a second, but I made a video about them, I think, like a year and a half ago, and I hadn't heard any updates on their story until literally like today. And I'm so excited to share what has happened with them. But basically, that couple, Eli and Caitlin, they ran a church called Victorious Grace Church in Colorado. You can't go there because it's online only. Nothing wrong with that, just pointing that out. But then, as they were in the process of running this online-only church, they discovered a much more lucrative grift, which is selling Christians a different kind of invisible salvation. And what they started selling, and I'm getting this from the Colorado Securities Commission, is that they started selling crypto to their followers. And this is something that was put out in January of 2024. Like I said, it's been like a year and a half. And check this out. The complaint alleges that Regalado targeted Christian communities in Denver and claimed that God told him directly that investors would become wealthy if they put money into index coin. The Regalados had no experience in cryptocurrency, which was clear when a third-party auditor's report allegedly described their index coin code as unsafe, unsecure, and riddled with serious technical problems. Despite that report, the regulados allegedly continued to promote index coin as a low-risk, high-profit investment. The complaint alleges that in reality, the index coin was illiquid and practically worthless. Investors lost millions, and the defendants dissipated investor funds to support their lavish lifestyle. Holy crap. So these Christian pastors told their followers to buy a specific kind of crypto and then ran off with the money. And the allegation is that they knew this was a garbage crypto, which I know I'm being redundant right there. But there you go. What is the deal with their lavish lifestyle? According to the securities commissioner, she said that at least $1.3 million went directly to the regulados, who spent it on a Range Rover, jewelry, luxury handbags, cosmetic dentistry, boat rentals, and snowmobile adventures. Oh, and home renovations and an au pair to take care of their kids because they're off busy grifting. So, Index Coin and the Kingdom Wealth Exchange, which is the platform where you could buy and sell this crypto, it was all shut down in November of 2023 before the Securities Commission went public with all this. And basically, Eli Regalado urged investors not to panic after everything was shut down. He said, "I really believe you're going to see a miracle in very short order." And the miracle never came, but law enforcement officials did. So the question is, how did they pull off this scam? And the thing is, they had a crypto website where they posted about all this stuff for their followers, and it is now offline. The Internet Archive is good. So we could see some of the stuff they posted. And the short answer is, how did they get Christians to give them all this money? They used a lot of big technical words that normies would not understand to get supporters. They also sprinkled in a lot of God talk, and they told people, trust us, we're Christians. Here's a typical example of a post. This is from 2022. Check this out. TikTok, wait on the Lord. Hello, Index Coin family. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice. Yeah. What else? What does he say? I will remove myself here so you could read this. We were planning on launching tomorrow, but we're waiting on our business number to be issued. Our Singapore legal team, they don't have one of those, informed us we should have the number this week, and then they'll file our exchange paperwork with FinTrack, Financial Transactions and Report Analysis Center. We need this in order to be licensed to launch. And if I'm reading that and I'm a normie who's like, I just want to make money, I might think, okay, these people sound like they know what they're doing. I mean, they have legal people in Singapore. They have acronyms. Maybe I think nothing weird is happening, so I keep giving them my money. There's another update this guy made. This one had a bunch of Bible verses in it. Check this out. This is part of a longer post, but you don't have to be poor anymore. The very first thing the anointing of God is designed to do is break that yoke of poverty in your life. Then a Bible verse. So by design, God has provided a way for you to provide for 3 generations. Most of us are scratching it out and feel fortunate to provide for just one, but that is changing. God is raising up a new generation of believers who are willing to stand in faith and take God at his word. What else? I saw a post online from a fellow believer who warned his community about this project, saying the math didn't add up. If you see this, brother, you are right. It doesn't. It's the almost too good to be true news. Whoever that fellow believer is, that dude was right. Sounds too good to be true. It is too good to be true. This is what they are posting on their weird crypto channel. And along the entire path, when they were trying to get people to invest in them, this is one of the charts they used to convince people to give to them. They said, look at this, using historical data, if Index Coin had been operational in 2019, the following chart shows the value of the coin then, today, and factoring in future predictions of the crypto market. So in 2019, if it was just worth 46 cents, today it would be worth almost $10. And in 2028, it'll be worth $86 and change. Keep in mind, the 2028 number is purely made up. And also this idea that, if we go back in time, this thing was worth way less than it is now. Like, they're making up the beginning and the end and pretending this thing is just up and to the right. The chart is always up and to the right. So this is the way they're just scamming people into all of this. They also issued a white paper, basically the technical pamphlet for why you should invest in them. And this pamphlet was insane as well. Check this out. Like, for example, one of the ways they were saying we're going to market this coin to the Christian market, they said we're going to make sure a lot of people buy this coin because the more people who buy into it, the more it's worth. And they said Christians are the target market. Check this out. With over 2.18 billion Christians spread across over 200 countries around the globe, the Index platform has as one of its specific aims to become the platform of choice for every believer, while also helping inspire and strengthen their spiritual lives. They're literally doing, this is a true story. I once had to write a book proposal. And one of the things they ask you to do in a book proposal is, who's the audience for this book that you're asking us to give you money to write? And like every author, I think, knows, like, you got to make that a really big number somehow. Like, who's your audience? It's young women who are very interested in dating or something like that. And it's like, well, there are like 1 billion atheists in the world, and I suppose they will all want to read my book. And of course, that's bullshit. But that's the sort of thing that I thought of when I saw what these people are writing. Every Christian in the world is part of our potential untapped market. And that last line, while also helping inspire and strengthen their spiritual lives. How is crypto going to inspire and strengthen your spiritual life? I have no clue. And the thing is, they don't know either. It's just the sort of bullshit they say. But then, just to prove that this is a crypto thing built on that's built on a solid foundation. My favorite thing about this white paper is this right here. They said, here's the end of the white paper. They have their operations team starting with Eli, the pastor, and they list a couple, and his wife, sure, she knows a lot about crypto. Some other names. My favorite is if you go down this list. Oh yeah, here we go. Oscar. Just Oscar. He has no last name and it's a pseudonym. He wishes to stay anonymous. That's what I like. If I go to my bank and I'm like, who runs this bank? And they're like, it's Oscar. Don't ask any questions about who he is. I'm not putting my money in that bank. But what do we know about Oscar? He's been active in the IT space for about 30 years and in crypto since 2017, which, by the way, is way too late to get into the crypto game. Like, all the people who have made tons of money off of crypto got into it when they were like fetuses. Oscar is one of Index Coin's lead developers and an integral partner on our operations team, which is a weird thing then that this guy goes by a pseudonym. But wait, it's not just Oscar. There's also Jose, who's also a pseudonym, who's also a lead developer, and he's been writing smartphone apps since 2008. He's been active for 30 years. He brings his skill set to head the development department. Listen, if you have two guys on your development team who are not the pastor and his wife, and they don't even want to put their names on this thing, that's shady. But wait, don't worry. Don't worry. There's also a prophetic team. Because if I go to a bank and I'm thinking about putting my money in this bank, I really hope they have a whole staff of people who are going to pray for my money. Because I can't trust them by themselves. Why put your money in a safe if no one's going to pray for it? There's a prophetic team. And in addition to a bunch of men, they also included this lady, Amanda Earhart. I have no idea who she is, but I love the description. As a performer, singer-songwriter, record producer, and entrepreneur, Amanda has 24 years of writing, performing, and developing talent. That's fine. What the hell does that have to do with crypto? She founded some studio. She created the Find Your Voice Effortlessly program where singers learn how to enhance, protect, and preserve their voice without surgery, vocal rest damage, or strain. Auto-tune. She helps them use auto-tune. She serves as a prophetic voice for Index Coin's spiritual intelligence team. Why? Why do you need a spiritual intelligence team for your crypto scam? I want the nerdiest math whiz to run my crypto scheme. These guys are like, we have this Christian lady who does auto-tune for a living, and don't worry, she prays for the crypto. So you're in good hands. I don't even understand the scheme anymore. So anyway, they hyped this crypto for the longest time. And this guy, Eli, he would do these live streams with potential investors, and they didn't go well. Here's an example of like right before they were going to launch. He's like, guys, our network has been shut down. There's not enough people investing to keep it up and running. We don't have finances at this time to keep the servers running. We have a backup of the chain. Don't worry. He says like the platform had to settle for fraction of coin. Is this the end? And then he's trying to calm everyone down, saying, I know it looks bad, but don't worry. Keep giving me your money. It's so bad. And then, after all that, I'm going to show you a video here. In early 2024, after that Securities Commission said, we're filing this lawsuit, Eli Regalado posted a video. He's one of these guys, when he's in trouble, he's just going to post his way through it. And that whole video has been taken down. I literally could not find entire copies of the video, but it was glorious. And I did manage to find half of the video, and I'm going to play a chunk of it for you because you have to see how this guy's responding. Because again, I want to show you this first. This is the statement put out by the Colorado Securities Commission, right? They filed a complaint against alleged crypto fraud scheme. And look what they say at the very bottom. We allege that Mr. Regalado took advantage of the trust and faith of his own Christian community and that he peddled outlandish promises of wealth to them when he sold them essentially worthless cryptocurrencies, said Commissioner Chan. And now this guy is making a video to respond to this. Let me show you what he said. Enjoy this. It's only a minute long. I think there's a couple breaks in it, but check this out.
Let me just come out first and foremost by saying that Caitlin and I are being charged in a civil charge from the Colorado Securities and Exchange Commission for basically selling millions of dollars worth of cryptocurrency that is deemed worthless by the state. Now, the reason that they're saying that it's worthless is because there is no exit for people who have bought. So everyone that's watching this, who has put money into this, who wanted to take money out, you've been unable to do that. We launched an exchange, the exchange technology failed, things went downhill, and from that point forward, we've just been waiting on the Lord literally for a miracle. So the charges are that Caitlin and I pocketed $1.3 million, and I just want to come out and say that those charges are true. So there's been $1.3 million that's been taken out of, I think it was a total of $3.4 million. But out of that 1.3, $500,000 went to the IRS, and a few $100,000 went to a home remodel that the Lord told us to do.
That's my favorite part of the whole video. Yes, we did pocket 1.3 million, but you guys, some of it went to the IRS, leaving them with $800,000 by his own math. And he's like, come on, a few $100,000 went to a home remodel that the Lord told us to do. Oh my God. By the way, even if it's a few $100,000, that still leaves you with like $500,000 that you stole from people. I love, he said index coin is being called worthless because investors can't cash out right now, which, yeah, if you're at a bank, if you're running a bank and no one can get their money, yeah, you got a problem. It is worthless at that point. He did not mention that $290,000 was put into the bank account for his online-only church. Why does an online-only church need $290,000 in one fell swoop? Like, what type of webcam are you getting at that point? I don't know. But later in the video, this is the part that I can't seem to find online right now. He said, look, every time there's a snag, God's going to take care of everything. It's never about him. It's all just faith-based vibes. everywhere. And at one point, he said he even prayed to God, Lord, I don't want to do this. I don't know how to do this. I don't have any experience in this industry. These are direct quotes. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want to be caught up in something. And then he just kept doing all this. And then he concluded at the end of the video, either I misheard God or God is still not done with this project. So he just said he was like hoping for a miracle. And so that miracle did not come before that lawsuit was filed, that complaint was filed. And guess what? There hasn't been a miracle ever since. And after all this, one of the other things in the complaint made by the Securities Commission is that the defendants told investors, I want to make sure I say this correctly, defendants, the regulatos told investors that they would tithe and sow in causes that helped widows and orphans. But the payments to widows and orphans were primarily to the regulatos. They didn't help widows and orphans. They were helping themselves. And when that complaint was filed, again, like 18 months ago, this is important. Check out what the Securities Commission wrote. Before the cryptocurrency was shut down, index coins sold for $1.50 each, payable to Eli Regalato's Venmo account, or by wire transfer to some marketing bank account. Which, by the way, if your banker is like, oh yeah, I'll take your money, just to Venmo it to me, don't put it in the bank. That's shady. Investors were told that every index coin was worth at least $10. So you're giving me $1.50, but it's worth 10, according to the lawsuit, and that there were 30 million coins in circulation, meaning the company should have had $300 million backing the coin up in case they were all sold. State investigators instead found $30,000. So they were off by like a ginormous factor. And they were lying to people about how much money these coins were actually worth. So listen, like when your pastors tell you to invest in God's kingdom by way of his personal Venmo account, like it should raise a red flag, at least one. So look, I'll get to why this is news today, but like ultimately, this cryptocurrency is just like every other kind of Christian media. It's marketed as an alternative to something the secular world already offers, but it ends up being like a cheap, shitty knockoff, right? Like the people at the top of the pyramid, they reap all the benefits, all thanks to Christians who are even more gullible than they are. So in a way, it's not a surprise. Like this is what churches do too. Right? They say invest in God and you'll be rewarded in the long run. Invest in our church. God will reward you for it. Keep praying, keep tithing, keep spreading the word. Things will get better eventually. Now, some people figure out this is all a scam and they walk away before pouring more of their time and life and money into the ministry. And some people do have doubts, but they prefer remaining duped for life because it gives them hope and it gives them a community. And I kind of understand that. And obviously some people never catch on at all. But the thing that churches do that's valuable is that they're not directly dealing with finances. So when they say God is going to reward you, that could account for anything and it could come in any form. And there's no timeline on it. These people were like, give us your money and we will reward. We have a mathematical calculation for how much this is worth. And you can take out your money whenever. I mean, not now, but eventually, soon. Like these people were so greedy, they didn't stick to the age-old Christian playbook. So instead of selling God, where promises can be over-delivered with no oversight and no accountability, they sold an actual product. And that was their downfall. So over the past year, like I said, I think I talked about this a year and a half ago. So over the past year, this scam has been under a microscope. And what does Eli Regalato do? He keeps posting through it. There are posts on his YouTube channel. Like he made a video last year. I think he's sitting outside a fancy pool, which is not a good place to air any sort of video. But he basically says he didn't do anything wrong. Then he trashes the Securities Commissioner. And I'm quoting here, "You're a liar, liar, liar. I hope you get back in the office after your holiday and you see this and you see what you've done. Shame on you. You're a crook." That's what he says to the commissioner. And then 2 days later, he made another video where he's like, you guys, I'm really sorry for my tone in that previous video. So anyway, all of that involved like a bench trial where the securities commissioner is seeking a freeze on all of their assets. And the commissioner wants $3.4 million in restitution. Like the Colorado government securities commissioner person, she's trying to get this money back so that the victims don't lose their life savings. That's what she's trying to do. Now, this trial took place in May of this year, 2025, and they are currently waiting for the judge to rule on that case. Like, will they get their money back? We don't know yet. But that civil trial already happened. I want to repeat, that was a civil trial. The couple would not go to jail for any of that. It's just a matter of whether they can get the money back for the victims. So we're waiting for the judge to rule on that. But as it stands right now, the Regulados cannot sell their garbage coin in Colorado, and they cannot access their own funds in this whole scam. So why am I talking? I know that was a long build up to all this. Why am I talking about this now? Because yesterday, on Tuesday, guess who else chimed in here? The district attorney for Denver. And the district attorney would only get involved if there was a criminal case in addition to the civil case. And if the Regulados committed crimes, they might go to jail. And guess what the DA just posted? Check this out. Denver grand jury indicts married couple in alleged multi-million-dollar crypto scam. A grand jury heard the evidence and they're like, oh yeah, this couple did some shit. So Denver District Attorney John Walsh announced today that a Denver grand jury has indicted Eli and Caitlin Regalado on 40 counts regarding an alleged multi-million-dollar crypto scam. And by the way, this is pretty much the entire press release. It really doesn't say that much other than what I've already told you. But basically, what it says is the grand jury says, yeah, there's good reason to believe this couple committed 40 felony criminal charges of theft, security fraud, and racketeering. Nearly half the charges are theft. They stole money from people, screwed them out of money ranging from like $10,000 to $200,000. And I want to show you one thing in the charging document here. Look at right here, number 29. Let's read through this. This is amazing. Eli and Caitlin Regalado made material misstatements to prospective and current investors regarding the investments in Index Coin, including that the investments were safe and not risky, despite being backed with essentially no assets, that the coins were highly sought after and offered an unparalleled risk-to-return ratio. None of that's true. That the coins represented an index-based cryptocurrency that tracks and indexes the value of the top 100 cryptocurrencies. Sounds very fancy. It's all bullshit. An index-based investment is understood to mean a portfolio of investments meant to mimic the performance of an index. The defendants represented their coins as an index of the top 100 cryptocurrencies and used technical sounding terms to confuse investors when in fact the coins were essentially backed by no assets whatsoever, that the index coin was valued between $10 and $16 at purchase. So it's just lying about everything. So here's where we're at. The Regalados are scheduled to appear in court for a bail hearing on Thursday, July 24th. After that, if my understanding of this is correct, they have to enter their plea. I assume they will say not guilty. And then they have an option. Maybe their lawyers will try to negotiate their way out of it. Or like, we'll plead guilty to a couple of these 40 charges, but not all of them. So can we lessen how much punishment they'll get? And then if that doesn't pan out or they don't agree, then there'll be a trial. I don't know how much jail time they face because it depends on which of these charges are going to move forward. I spoke to the Colorado Division of Securities earlier today, and they basically told me even if the two departments work together, these two cases are very separate ones because I was trying to get a handle on the two different cases going on here. One's civil, one's criminal. But that said, the securities commissioner said last year she's going to try and recoup at least some of the investments for the people who got defrauded. If she is able to do that, with the civil case in this matter, she would be giving these people far more than the pastors and their promises ever delivered. And if the criminal prosecution lands them in prison, I think their victims would seriously get a sense of justice that they are owed. And I think if I'm the Regulatos, I would start putting together my inevitable prison ministry, because it sure as hell looks like that's where this is ending up for them. Unless they want to admit, yeah, all right, we fucked everyone over on purpose. We'll plead guilty to that. Please don't put us in jail. That's the other alternative here. So, interesting story. I can't believe I got an update to this one. I was so excited to hear about it. I think that's it for me today. I'm just taking a quick look to see if there is anything else people have said in the comments. I apologize again if I missed anything you said today, just because Den's not here. Den usually does this for me. But otherwise, thank you for listening in. I'm not seeing anything I need to respond to right now. But as always, please go to friendlyatheist.com, subscribe to the newsletter. And if you feel generous, you could subscribe to my crypto at patreon.com/Hemant. I appreciate that if you're able to do it. Thank you so much. And next week, I should be back on Thursday at my regular time. Hopefully, Den will be here too. All right, that's it. Have a good one. I'll talk to you later.